All right, welcome everyone to Artist Conversations with the Introverts Collective, who will be talking about their current exhibition at Gallery Route 1, Perspectives, Past, Present, and Future. I'm Shelley Rugg, the gallery coordinator at Gallery Route 1. The conversation today will begin with members of the Introverts Collective talking about their work for about 20 minutes. After that, we will open up to the audience for questions. We plan to end the event by 6 p.m. For our presentation today, we ask that you please stay muted unless we invite you to unmute. For best viewing, select speaker view from the top right corner of the Zoom viewing screen. We want you to know that we are recording today's presentation for future viewing on our website and YouTube channel. Before we begin the conversation, I would like to introduce Z Morvitz, who will talk briefly about the Project Space exhibitions. All right, Z.
I'm the director of the Project Space program for visiting artists. And what this means is that we have a space within the gallery that is set aside for artists who are not members of our artist collective. Artists are invited to show in the project space if their work addresses one of three themes that we think are pretty important, one being the climate crisis, the other immigration, and the third social justice. And the installation that's in the gallery today is on the theme of racism. Jenny Lynn Hall is here. She is the exhibition coordinator for the project space and worked very closely with the artists in the space to get the installation going. So I'm going to let her talk about that.
Unmute. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Lynn. This is actually the first installation I've done with Project Space, so it's been really fun and interesting. I especially enjoyed working with this group of women and seeing how this project evolved from being an outdoor exhibition in Mill Valley to being adapted for the gallery, which fleshed it out more in terms of their experiences, the history of the project, and it also includes an amazing video, which really opened the doors of compassion and empathy in me for this issue that I thought I had a grip on and some understanding of. And so I'm really grateful for their openness and for getting to know all of them. The Introverts Collective is made up of more people than are here today. This is the Perspectives team. And so now I'll introduce Winona Lewis, Naima Dean, Sharon Virtue, and Zoe Fry, who are here in the gallery to talk about their project.
Thank you. My name's Zoe Fry, and I'm the founder of the Introverts Collective. And so I wanted to speak on that. Part of what you'll see today is some work, at least on the graphic design and the building, that is supported by a whole collective of people that allows the primary artists to be highlighted. So I want to thank all those people in the background. Really grateful for that. This particular project, Perspectives Past, Present, and Future, was born, and this team was born during a period of time in Mill Valley, California, after the murder of George Floyd. And the culture that we were experiencing in our small town, what happened was a person put up a sign that said white silence equals violence in the square in downtown Mill Valley. And Mill Valley is a very controlled aesthetic. They have a ban on signs and banners. And so this was kind of like putting up a sign or a banner during a time of signs and banners was definitely kind of going against that system. And it was taken down by the city. And so the person who put it up called the city council. which was all on Zoom, like everything is during our COVID time, and asked the city council why the sign was taken down, and B, what their plan was as a city council to respond to Black Lives Matter movement. And the mayor responded, and nobody interrupted her or corrected her, that it was not of the purview of the council to respond to issues that aren't of local importance. And then they just moved on. And that particular clip ended up going viral around the nation. And it woke up more of the community. You know, there were already kids who were responding and protesting after the murder of George Floyd, but the mayor's comments kind of galvanized the rest of the community to say, hey. And so the mayor and some of the other members of the council had a meet and greet in the town square to respond and try to smooth everything over, and at the Depot Plaza downtown. And so I went to that event, as did Naima sitting behind me. And my experience, you know, as a white ally kind of person, watching what happened was that I felt like nobody was listening. Like there were Black and brown people who had shown up to speak to their experience and speak to the fact that they exist in the space, in the town, in the larger community of Southern Marin. And they're like, hey, that doesn't land, that we don't matter. And so I had this reaction like, we need to create a space for people to tell their stories because no one's listening, and it needs to be center to the community. So I actually went home and engineered a big Black plywood box, which I was going to drop off in the square because in the middle of the night, like a guerrilla project, because we didn't have those kind of spaces like you had in Oakland and you had in the city, where you had all this plywood available for art and public discourse. And so I was going to try to recreate that. And right before I was able to build that, they had another city council meeting where they discussed this issue alone. How are we going to respond to Black Lives Matter? And I found myself, after 5 hours of listening to other people and other art projects being suggested, I raised my hand and found myself suggesting it. And they picked the art projects to go to the art commission of Mill Valley and have the commission kind of vet the projects and figure out which ones they were going to support moving through the town's channels. And they ended up picking this project. And they didn't like the box. And so they asked me to come up with something more aesthetically appealing. And so I came up with doors, because to me, doors were blank canvases and also a metaphor. The Arts Commission, actually one of the members, was helpful in bringing the past, present, and future lens to it, rather than just 3 doors. We were trying to figure out how many doors, and she came up with 3. And the past, present, future lens, which is fantastic and really is a valuable addition. So at that point, what I was clear on is like, I just want to make this space. One of the ideas had been to commission the future door as a painting. And we wanted to choose some local artists. And in my initial outreach, some of the local artists in Marin City were really busy getting ready to open their own gallery. Marin City Arts and Culture, I believe they're called. And so they were so busy, the timing wasn't right. So I called these 2 people behind me, Winona and Naima. And I was like, what are we gonna do? And so Winona brought in Sharon, and I'm gonna pass over to Sharon now. And she's going to lead you through the beginnings of the installation and the process. And I'm going to take over camera duty. So give us a minute.
All right.
Can you do lights?
Sharon, talk a little bit about yourself before you
Yeah.
move. Let
Yeah.
people get to know you a little bit first.
Hi, so my name is Sharon Virtue. I am an artist currently living in Oakland, California, and friends with Winona, who called me up to tell me about the project and if I would be involved in it. And I have many, many years of community development work around the world. And so listening to the idea of what the project was, to me, there was definitely a possibility of a community involvement aspect to it. So that's kind of the main impetus for me for getting involved. And I'm also a visual artist. And so these guys really wanted to have the visual impact, and using art is a way of not having so much to use language. And it can be interpreted in many different ways. So definitely we wanted something that had a really strong visual impact. And so we sat together and came up with a design. I worked with Zoe and Winona and Naima, and we kind of bounced some ideas around using this idea, the theme of past, present, and future. So that's a little bit about me. Are we gonna go walk around the
Yeah, can you
gallery?
explain how they were painted, like how that happened?
Okay, so yeah, so we came up with ideas of visual ideas of how we wanted to represent past, present, and future. And so I developed a couple of ideas around that, and then we tested them out on the doors, and we talked also about the finish of the doors, because we wanted to incorporate the idea of age in the past door. And so sort of thinking about what that surface would look like, and then incorporating the visual aspect into the quality of the door. So it was really a way of integrating lots of different elements, visual elements and symbolic elements that were saying things beyond words, which is sometimes much more useful. And so we put the images up on the doors, and then the idea was to invite the community to come and help us paint them. And that was over the hottest weekend that I've ever experienced, living 25 years in California. So just the fact that we were able to stay there and really hold space in those circumstances was on top of everything else. It was yeah, it was hard work, but it's really important work. And when you're with people that you love, it becomes even more joyous. So despite the circumstances, we're always smiling.
Can we walk over and see the images, and you can tell us a bit about the kind of coloring book process? You want to start with this one?
Yeah, so what I did was I projected the image onto the door so that it was just going to be really easy for people to follow along. And so I projected the image, and then drew a very, very thin line onto the door that people could just about see. And then as the day went along, everybody kind of, I was sort of directing people and keeping it going in a certain direction, but not kind of micromanaging the whole thing. Some things happened that weren't what I was planning on, and that's fine. That's a part of the process. So it makes it fun that way.
And Winona, do you want to talk at all about who this person is and why we chose these words?
Well, this person, is this a person in the community, or is this grandma?
No.
At first, we were considering doing people from the community, but then we decided in our process to not necessarily do that. And so we evolved here.
A lot of people in my world think that this is my father. And I think that this represents the father in all of us in the Black community around what our fathers held inside the space as far as bringing in the history of the past and the struggle. this, Black history is often taught through our elders. And so this represents our elder and hope. And hope is always something of the inspiration of change. And so my part of this project was really about the words and the words that we use. And of course, here we are talking about the past, which is hope. And, and if we just think about the word hope, if we just breathe into hope, it's such a powerful word. And if we're going to choose one, it resonates so deeply. So that's the past. But if we come around to what's happening in the now. And the now is what is so current, which is palpable. It's like we can feel the currency of what's happening right now. And that's what we want, and that is change. So here we have change down at the bottom. We have Black Lives Matter. This is the student, this is the activist, this is current, this is somebody who's right at the middle, kind of the beginning of their life with that real strong energy that they have, a passion. And so this is what's happening right now, is that we want movement, we want change. We want change right now. We don't want this moment to end without us being active and participating.
Can I add to that? I would just in terms of change, what we're seeing right now is society has been stuck in constructs. Let me take my mask off. We've been stuck in constructs, systems that do not support people of color. They are constructs that are developed to advance white people and to delay the progress intentionally of people of color. And so in our present day, that's when you see people saying Black Lives Matter. We're literally just asking for a seat at the table. We're not saying our lives supersede the lives of other people or more, but we've been held back so long that we need a seat at the table. And when Black lives matter, then everybody's lives matter, because we are at the bottom of the structure of the system. So the only way to really progress this, but now, as readily as we need to, is to deconstruct the system, to force change.
Which will lead us to
Equity. This is equity. This is the hope and the change. We'll build equity for a brighter future for our children. And that we can't continue to pass down the oppression that has continued on from one generation to the next. So yeah, so these three pieces, when you sit in front of them, you actually really start to feel what the work that we all have to do, because this really is partnership. This work is together. This is the work of our fellow, seeing each other, our fellow humanity, work of the United States. This is the hope of our country.
do you want to talk about
Let's talk a little bit about the back of the doors. So when you come to the gallery, initially you would have been able to see, when this was installed downtown Novelli, you would have been able to see the back of all the doors. And I think for all of us, the door that had the depth and that we kind of contributed to the most was the past door. Because in order to get to the present and to the future, we have to understand the past. And so that's kind of where where I stepped into this project. I was downtown Mill Valley that day with Zoe, and actually not with Zoe. I didn't know Zoe. I didn't know Sharon. I knew Winona, we're from the same tribe. But Zoe kind of found me because I spoke downtown that day. And I guess it spoke to where she was what the direction that Zoe was moving towards. So we kind of just discussed what we were going to do on the backs of each door. And because I am a librarian and used to connecting with people. And because I live in the Mill Valley community and happen to know like pretty much all of the, not all, but many of the Black and brown people in the community, it was important to get the history on the back of these doors, because they tell the facts of what has happened in the community, redlining, stories of people who were actually able to move past, to succeed despite barriers in the community. Kind of tells the history of it being a sundowning town historically, and how much of that actually carries through to our present day, which kind of aligns with what happened to George Floyd. What happened to George Floyd can happen anywhere. It can happen in Mill Valley. It may not have happened yet, but it can happen anywhere. And so that's why we have to get the consciousness of the people involved to make this change. As a librarian, being a public engager, I called up everyone I knew, hit up those social media, and tried to get everyone that I could possibly get downtown Mill Valley, who maybe you don't always see, to come out en masse and participate in this project, and welcome the whole community to come and participate in this project and speak to one another about the facts and truths and experience. And we decided we wanted to make an element where people could contribute, and that's kind of what you see here and what you'll see when you come down to the gallery. We have a couple of questions that we ask our community to participate in and become part of the art, become part of the experience, live with us, stand with us, open up with us, join with us. We're giving you equity in our art piece.
Thank you. Okay. So you want to talk about the video too a little bit?
Yeah. Sure. Or why don't you talk about the video and I'll hold on to this. You know that the video's here. I'll give you a shot on the video. Go for it.
Well, I wasn't going to turn the video on.
We'll put Zoe on the spot for a
As
moment.
the editor of the video, you're too high. You're pointing at this one. So the gallery Route 1 wanted to also hear about our story as a group, right? Because part of the process for us was for people who didn't necessarily know each other coming together at a time that was very emotional and building something with the deepest loving intention to be helpful to the community, and needing to navigate our big creative spirits, our fantastic personalities, and racial issues within our team. And so the gallery is kind of interested about that as well, when we talked about creating a little bit more content than just the 3 doors. So within the gallery space, you'll also find a collage work on 4 sets of doors that tells in a visual way the story of it happening and what it kind of looked like as it was created in the square. And then also we have this video which we put together that is a bit of an overview of our personal kind of process and how we felt about the project and what we had to navigate just personally working with the subject matter. We'd love you to watch it. It's on the website. So, or you can watch it in the gallery. Thank you. So let's go back to seating and we can begin the question and answer. Pardon our motion.
All right, so those of you in the audience, we are going to start the the Q&A portion of our evening. And so if you would like to ask a question, you can hit the raise hand icon, or you can simply raise your hand this way. And then when I call on you, make sure you unmute and ask your question. All right. So does anybody have a question at this point? Yeah, Jenny Lynn.
I was really curious about the two different ways in which you let the public participate, and how it felt different. So you had there's the artistic part where people are painting and helping the colors come on the doors, and then there's another part where people are asked to really confront issues of racism in their own lives. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about those two elements in interacting with the public in the square.
So I don't, what happens when people are actually in the process of painting in a community setting like this is that you're already having that conversation. Just because you're painting a rainbow doesn't mean that you have to be talking about the rainbow. So you're, you know, the things that, I mean, as soon as people stepped into the space, they knew that there would be conversation about racism. So it wasn't, basically what was happening is that people would come in because they felt safer painting, but then the same conversations would be happening in the painting process. And then they would be actually, they couldn't help themselves but go and write something because they just had this really profound experience in a creative practice. So there's something about creative practice that really crosses boundaries. So it isn't just a either or kind of situation. It was all flowing together. It was one thing. It wasn't one and then one thing and then another. Like, this is fun, but this is really hard. Like it wasn't like that.
It was both and, not either or, but both and, which is kind of how we grew up, both and. That was the name of my dad's club, so that's why I'm throwing that out there. My dad had a jazz club in San Francisco called Both and that's kind of inherent in my being. Winona's mom worked at that club, and her dad, and but to add, to me, I just to add on what Sharon said, like the front of the door is collaborative and conversations and communication seem to transpire in that space. And if you go to the back of the door, it's a little more introspective. It's asking you to be, to really look within and reflect on your experience or a moment or a time or the questions. I mean, there's parameters and there's not, but one space seemed like maybe one side of the doors pushes you to be more collaborative, and one side kind of allows you to reflect and
or both and. It can go either way. You know, like when you're in the process of painting, I mean, when I was working on this project, all of that reflection was happening just in a different way. So that, I mean, that's the beauty of having different medium in a community project, is it gives you lots of opportunities to use different parts of your brain in the creative process. So, you know, I'm not, I mean, I don't think of myself as a writer. I have to do it because it helps me to get things that I want. But I think that, you know, for me, my go-to would be to draw a picture of something rather than to write about it. But it opens up certain doors that, like, all of that can flow much more easily. So yeah.
And that was in the design.
And I just want to say from working with the people in that space is you could just tell that people had so much inside by actually participating in the painting or the writing. It was just like, you could feel it in their bodies, just going, yes, I need to do something. It's like it's like working with the elephant in the room. It's like the elephant is the room, and to the fact that people could come and participate and paint on something and write and release something that they've been holding was so important, and to have a place, a safe place where people could participate all together with us holding this container. And children would come and paint and, you know, and learn about what we were talking about. And it was multi-level. It was really community. It was a true community piece, that these are conversations that we really should be having everywhere.
And
And
then,
did that surprise you? I mean, was it in the design to have these different, to bring people in through painting and then lead them to something else? Or were you surprised by that happened organically?
It was planned, yes. It was definitely something that we considered as a way of people leaving an artifact of their experience. So if, you know, the community door is once painted, who knows whose brushstroke is whose, but the comments on the back belong to an individual. And so there was this way that, yeah, that we planned ways that we wanted people to be able to interact with the piece.
but there was also an organic kind of life that came, like even just from the beginning and the way we interacted with each other. I mean, we really didn't all know each other very well. We had a short amount of time to come together, and organically we did. I was just reflecting how Sharon just said she doesn't, she'd rather communicate through a picture. And that was how I conveyed some of the project and what I was seeing to Sharon. Even though I'm not an artist, we found ways to connect in the languages that we each speak as individuals. We see three Black women, but we each have our different languages as well. We are all humans, and that's kind of, but where we converge and diverge and intersect and merge and all that, you know, that was part of the organic, is trying to navigate our way through that. But I was also thinking how Winona had just said something about children coming and learning, and that this went downtown, and it was for the youth and it was for the community, but actually a learning attribute evolved out of this, and schools came down and observed and participated and learned. And so we discovered that there's actually a broader life for this project than maybe our initial vision. Yes, we wanted children to come and participate, but did we really necessarily think that many schools would use it as a teaching device? We knew we wanted it by schools, but to actually use it as a learning opportunity, that was something that has grown, or even it coming to this gallery.
I want to speak to that too. So for me, like, I was the curator, you know, I built the framework. That was what I did. Like, I envisioned the blank canvases and I built the frames and delivered them. And then I made a commitment with the city, because what we were up against were free speech laws. And in order to kind of keep some of the political rhetoric, you know, that you see online and all of that off the back of the doors, it required curation. And that was an agreement I made with the city, that every single day, as long as the piece was going to be there, I would go down to the square and check it for content and clean it up. Any graffiti, any racial slurs, any political stuff. And I learned a lot in the 2.5 months that I went down to the square every day. Because what my favorite thing that I saw were young people being drawn to it, right? Like, if you see the back of the future door, it's like there's lots of color. The kids are really drawn to it. They want to fill out a star on the future door. They want to fill out 20 stars. And sometimes I would observe the hesitancy of their parent who's being dragged into the experience. I thought that's so fantastic, right? Like the kids' emotional response to the visual is pulling this family into this dialogue or this space, even if they don't talk about it, because the kids would ask, like, what is this? What's this about? Why is it da, da, da? And the questions begin, and I call it accidental learning. Like, there's not an intention to learn about racism or an intention to open my heart to the experience of another, but it happens because I'm in it, this thing is in the space. And there's kind of no getting around it. It was interesting to observe which people tried to avoid it and which people really engaged with it. And what I did love really watching was, you know, teenagers reading the backside of the past door, and or families, multi-generations of people reading about the land that they stand on, going all the way back to the Indigenous experience. And that, to me, does really affect our present understanding and our decisions about what we do in the future. So that accidental community learning part was fascinating to me. And I felt that because the conduit was art, and the conversation was guided with these questions, it provided a really safe container to talk about this thing that can go sideways politically really fast and has a lot of emotion for a lot of people.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Tony, you need to unmute. There you go.
So I'm curious about how this has deepened each of you personally, and then how you envision carrying this project into the future. I'm muted again. I'm off.
Good question.
That's a good question. It's like, you know, that feels so loaded. You know, it's like the burden of this work is our whole life. You know, and it's a delicate balance between wanting to bring people along and actually wanting people to show up themselves and not do any bringing along. I found myself that I have a lot of relief in doing artwork right now. I've been doing a lot of, the poem is mine, and I've been doing a lot of writing, and that has been my greatest relief personally for myself. But I feel the burden of this work has been my whole life and my family's life, my ancestors' life. And the passage of doing it through art is the most, feels the most in alignment. So, and also the partnership and participation and sharing in the stories, and that this is, you know, we've always had white allies, and it's really like giving us all a place to be and to gather in this work feels like the most most in alignment at this time around how fatigued I am. And I like this project because it's not on all our shoulders. It's like we put something out there for people to start participating in, and hopefully to light their pilot light around this work, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take the we. And yeah, so I don't have a big mission as far as this work continuing, but I feel like it's happening, and the body it's happening on its own organically, and I trust in that process. And I will continue to show up, and I will continue to be in the circle.
All right.
You want to add anything to that, Sarah? About the, like, just as far as the, I mean, I have a million ideas about the future.
Was that the
Where,
question?
where this project, the last part of the question was about the future, like how do you see
Where we see it going?
where is
I mean,
it?
first I want to speak to like, were you changed by this? I mean, I feel like I was turned inside out by this project because I jumped into building it from an emotional reaction. And I think normally I have a lot of self-protection and a lot of editing. And so I hold back my dreams for the world to be different, and I hold back my participation in the world being different. And I kind of jumped around that control and found myself deep in it. And that has changed me. That's changed me a lot. Like I feel like I ran a rapids ride, and I've come to the other side. And it's given me, I can't differentiate a little bit between the project and then also the work that Naima and I did on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, because they were two very different experiences. So with the art, it feels powerful and effective, and it feels healthy and clean for the community. And then working with the task force and the government was really draining and painful, and felt like the old system was winning. And so my spirit feels confused. I feel changed. My spirit is confused right now. It's both super inspired by participating in these kinds of projects that affect the community and cause learning. And then I also feel the crushing devastation of the weight of the system. And I think as a white person who's been protected from that crushing weight, it's been my choice to allow my heart to open to it or not. And now I think I'm forever aware and away of it than I was before. So the future is really open. I think we're really all feeling the energy of it just continuing to be organic and grow. Naima speaks of it really well. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay. Well, I mean, there were two questions there, right? So
Yeah.
there was how has this process changed you or affected you or whatnot? And it's interesting because definitely working on this, I feel a couple of years ago, I guess, I was living in Mill Valley, and I felt like I live it here, but I don't belong here. I hate it here, even though I love it there. And so I decided that if I didn't like it, I had to do something to try to make it better. And so I actually joined the board of the Mill Valley Fall Arts Festival there and made some changes. And I liked the changes, and I liked what it felt like to contribute. When the mayor made that statement, fast forward a couple of years, I was just coming off of working in the homeless shelters for COVID. And I kind of was, prior to that, I had been in the house for a month and a half. And then I ended up in a homeless shelter. I was terrified. I bowed out for the first 2 weeks, and then I decided to go and face it and see for myself before I judged what that space would be like. And when I got there, I was like, I loved it. I loved working with the people there. I loved watching the opportunity that was presented. And I had come in with this one idea, and I walked out of there with another idea. And then after going to the plaza that day and getting connected with these people and working on this project, it was like a door opened for me. And I felt that I had a responsibility. So I stepped up and I stepped into this process. And I'm used to working in programs and stuff like that. So that sort of felt organic. I'm not used to working or being around a lot of strong women all at once. I have a lot of female friends from a long time, but new women can be a challenge. And so, so for me, that was also a changing thing. I had to learn how to be open in that way. I was raised by a man. I have this hard kind of protective shell. I am all the stuff that Zoe experienced and like that came down on her is stuff that I've lived my entire life experiencing. So for me, I was like a butterfly coming out, like, and just overwhelmed by all these different opportunities that there were so many of them. Working on the DEI task force in Mill Valley, continuing this project, coming here. I did a Black business pop-up. I worked at an air rescue. I ran SFPL to Go. I'm running a community hub. Now, all these different things to me pulled me out of myself and dropped some of the fear and allowed me to I stifled my voice to fit in, to belong, to not threaten, to not disrupt. And now it's like you realize that the importance of using your voice supersedes your being. You have to speak the truth, no matter the consequences. And so I have less fear of the consequences than I had once upon a time. So that I'm more apt to not only stick my toe in the water, but like submerge. And in doing that, there's some hard moments and some great moments. And so that's what this experience thus far has done for me. But organically, I feel like what we see here and what we saw happen, you can do everywhere. And initially we had wanted to, like Zoe said, bring this project to Marin City. That was an intention. We wanted to do that. That was the city adjacent to Mill Valley. There's a story there. It's a connected story. Coming out to Point Reyes, we came out here when the gallery presented this idea to us, and we found ourselves out here in the middle of town brainstorming, and all these ideas came on. And out of these ideas coming on, which Sharon's going to share with you in a moment, because I know she's itching to tell you the visions. And she's so good at it. So that's coming in just a sentence or two more. But for me, just out of all these ideas, I mean, this group of women and all these people that have jumped in to support us, like the possibilities of this are endless, and the exploration, and it excites me because I can see this locally here in Point Reyes, and maybe, some of the stuff that we see, but this project it's community, and the issues, the topic are everywhere. This is a global conversation. And so for me, I can see doors everywhere, doors all over the county, all over the state, all over the country, all over the globe. That's what I began to see. And that's how I see us connecting. And Sharon has so much to say.
In 2 minutes to say.
Well, yeah, I would like to invite you to find your last words.
Oh, great.
Sharon,
I want to hear your.
So yeah, the future, what's the future? So I mean, Naima, you forgot to mention the hot tub session as well, where we talked about actually taking over the whole world and running a whole carnival of like community art projects. And I mean, I always go there, always ends up like a carnival. And I think that it's important to bring the carnival to these situations, because otherwise it's all struggle and pain, and it's hard work. And so if I can bring the carnival along, at least people have an opportunity to bring a little lightheartedness, because really what we're trying to do is create a whole world full of lighthearted people who care about each other and want to share and want to be in the carnival. So that's always my kind of go-to for the future. And with the town of Point Reyes, when we came together and we walked around town, I mean, the Grandy building, of course, is just this huge thing in the middle of town. That's like, what? Why isn't there an art project on that building? I mean, there are some art projects, but something really big and something really relevant to what is happening in the world now, which is, Winona's spoken to this a couple of times. I sort of have this very like, woo, gung ho, we're bringing the carnival, and and sometimes in a sleepy town, that's not always what people want. But I think one of the words that really comes to mind around issues not of social justice in general is about being woke. It's like, wake up and smell the roses, and and be a part of this and be engaged in the whole world that you live in, not just this perfectly amazing, super privileged little bubble that you could be floating around in. So the Grandy building was one idea, and then I'm also talking to the wetlands, the Giacometti building at the wetlands. I see a whole fabulous installation happening there. And then in Fairfax, we have a connection now to a group of people in Fairfax. And then we also have this great, I'm doing a project right now with anti-racist libraries. And so, talking to Naima about that, and the idea of having free libraries everywhere on the streets, wherever you go, you can access information to anti-racist issues. And other issues too. I mean, I also, I understand that this is the tip of an iceberg. There's the huge, vast expanse of social injustices and ecological injustices that we are currently dealing with in the world. It's just, we have to keep creating art. There's no way that we can't be doing it, because it wakes people up and it engages people in the experience.
So we're always open to anybody who feels inspired to join us. We will be coming to Point Reyes soon. And thank you for having us, Gallery Route 1.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your project with us this evening. And I want to let everyone know this exhibition will be up through March 28th. So please get down to the gallery so you can see it in person, so you can engage with the installation, and to let you know that the gallery is open Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 5. And we are following pandemic guidelines. So please bring your mask. And I want to ask you, if you were moved by today's presentation and would like to support the work that Gallery Route 1 does to bring art to the community, then please visit our website and make a donation today. Any amount will help us out. And be sure to make a note in the comments that your donation is because of Artist Conversations. And thank you again, everyone, for coming. And thank you to Z and Jenny Lynn for running the project space and inviting these artists in. And a big thank you to the artists, of course. And let's have one last view of you all. And good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.